Welcome back, class. In today's session, we're going to just go a little bit more in-depth related to SQL Server, combining some of the topics from previous lectures. As we previously covered, the two main areas we'll be focusing on are data definition language and data manipulation language. From previous lectures, you've seen that when we're talking about data definition language, we're really talking about the main actions that are being done. How we're doing create, how we're doing alter, how we're doing delete. And when we're doing the data manipulation language, which we're going to go into a little bit more detail here, it's really about querying one or more tables. So if we were looking at this table in SQL, where we've got product name, price, category, manufacturer, the next slides are going to be looking at how to best query this information to get the right results. So keep in mind, we're talking from a product perspective. Product is the table name, the attribute names being the product name, price, category, manufacturer, and then the individual rows containing the data related to the tables. When we're talking about schema, we're essentially looking at what is the name of the table and the attributes. Typically, this will be displayed as follows: the table name outside, and then within the brackets, the attributes listing from order typically of primary key to corresponding attributes. So if we're to look at how this is identified, the product name is being used as the key and as the primary key here, so we underline it when discussing. When we talk about data types, we've seen this from both an Access perspective as well as from Oracle and SQL Server. We're essentially looking at characters, numbers, and other. The most common character types are character and variable character, numbers from integer perspective, big integer, small integer, and float, and then others like money and date and time. Every attribute needs to have some type of data type to make sure that you are able to tie the relations together. As previously stated, when I'm talking about tuples, I'm talking about records. I'm going to continue to use these interchangeably as long as we have data type information for the attributes. So going back to the most basic form, we're doing the select from where statement, where we're selecting attributes from one or more relations where conditions apply. The most simple query when leveraging the data that was shown would be to do a select all. In this case, from products where category equals gadgets. Doing this will, when leveraging the data, will focus on the gizmo product name and the power gizmo, and will get you the following results. Continuing on the same line, if we were to look at the product name, price, and manufacturer for the product where the price is greater than 100, first looking at the data, you should see, if the query is written correctly, both the single touch and multi-touch fields where we'd be pulling both the name, the price, and your manufacturer, not worrying about the category. Now, typically when you're looking at this, you're going to need to understand how to properly notate your answers. So if I'm looking at, again, product on the outside of the brackets and then primary key, you will be looking at the same component when looking at what the answer would show. Talked a little bit about case insensitivity. Typically you'll see select statements in all caps. You can, however, make the case for being case insensitive because we're essentially really looking more at the command structure. However, if you're looking at attributes specifically from a content perspective, it's going to view Seattle with a capital S different than Seattle with a small s. So try to think of it as commands versus data. Now we've talked a little bit about wildcards, specifically around the percent sign. In order to leverage wildcards, you're going to need to also have the like command. And with the like command, it's essentially going to be looking for pattern matching. So if you're seeing a percentage, it's any sequence of characters. If you're seeing an underscore, it's any single character. Additionally, we can look at what we're going to do to select distinct categories in order to remove duplicates. So if I'm going to do select a distinct category from product versus a select category from product, I'm going to, with one result, see just the three because the gadgets list is twice than the other. In previous lectures, we walked through select from and where, as well as then what to do with the corresponding results. Typically, what you'll see from a corresponding results component is an order by component. What you'll essentially see is the standard out-of-box review, with ties being broken by the second attribute on the order by list. So if all the prices are the same, it's going to go to the next attribute and so on. Order typically is descending unless you specifically specify descending as a keyword. So if I'm going to look at these three pieces of SQL, select distinct category from product, order by category, select category from product, order by name, and select distinct category from product, order by product name, what would you expect the answers to be? So if I'm looking at selecting the distinct category, the three categories would be gadgets, photography, and household, with gadgets, household, and photography being the order that's shown. If I'm showing the select category by product, order by product name, you're going to see it essentially pulling all of the information, but then looking at the order based off of the alphabetical components from the product name. Now we talked a little bit about keys. When we're looking at the company table, company name would be set up as a key. While I don't necessarily recommend that based off of the fact that it does not have the ability to have an ID table, it specifically shows which key is primary. Same thing from a product name perspective with product name as the primary key of the product table. However, you'll see the company name in the company table and the manufacturer in the product table are the same companies. So in this situation, the company name from the company table perspective will be acting as a primary key in the product table. When we talked about joins in previous lectures, we looked at how to best combine. So if we're looking at joining both the product and the company tables together, this will allow us to run such queries as how to find all products under $200 manufactured in Japan, returning their names and prices. And you'll see that within the where statement, where the manufacturer equals the company name. Again, this is another example showing the product and company tables, selecting a product name and price from a product and company, using the join between the manufacturer and the company name, as well as the country being Japan, with a price less than or equal to 200. And here's how you would notice and notify the data. Now, a couple more examples of joins to help you with the exam. If I'm looking at the product name, price, category, manufacturer, company name, stock price, and company, and I want to find all Chinese companies that manufacture products both in electronic and toy categories, I'm going to be looking at that from a SQL perspective. Now, when you're looking about joins in the overall, the key that you need to look at is how to make sure you don't have unexpected duplicates. As you're looking at this slide, make notes to see what you think would cause duplicates to occur. Again, looking at the data, having the statement, what do you find that what do you believe the outcome of the SQL query is? So what's the problem? What's the solution? When we get into some of the different variables, it becomes noticeable in terms of how to show different fields tied back together properly. So if we've got an address field in person as well as an address name and company, how are we going to be able to properly show the select distinct? Which address are we looking for? What you'll more commonly see is the variable attached to the table name. So you'd be looking at select distinct from a person person name company dot address, which is basically going to say that we're looking at the company address and not the person's address. And just another example of how to best display. In the next lecture, we'll be looking at some of the different meanings and semantics of SQL queries. Thank you.